Chapter 4, and a pretty nice effect, I guess. These intros always get even nicer, I'd say. Maybe not. But hello and welcome back to the next episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. And I'm here again, your host Christopher Walch. And I'm a 17, actually now 18-year-old graphic design student from Austria. And I'm pretty fucking pumped to be here with you again. Actually, going through another summary and doing another podcast, which is fucking great. Just feels a little bit different now. I've just been getting into the recording so immediately and so fast that it just feels a little bit confusing right now and a little bit just strange even. I don't know why. Is this worth... I see. I know what's missing. And I know what's wrong. And there shouldn't be no towels in the background. But yeah, I actually today realized that I should actually do something like a second summary besides the summary that I'm going through today. But for today, I actually decided to do the same thing as yesterday because, I would have just, had to search for something that's even great, something that you can get something from. And this is not something that's quite easy. I do just really have to see, okay, if this is really something that you benefit, especially you benefit, and also maybe something that is not too boring for me to go through, because I should just, interact with it and add value and whatsoever as well. So it is quite complicated and it is quite, it takes quite a lot of time to actually just, search for a summary or search for some content. It doesn't have to be a summary to go through. I could have gone through another millionaire interview, but I guess, just this is something that's quite quick, and when I just need something for producing the video, producing the second video, or producing the first video, doesn't matter. But for me, it's quite nothing that's too good. For sure, there are certain. I just have to calm down a little bit actually. There are for sure some millionaire interviews that were just really great, and I think that I've learned a lot from them. But value, time, knowledge kind of ratio isn't that good, and I would say in summaries it's way better. And maybe we'll just go through articles in the near future. Could also be true. The problem there is that I haven't actually found a website. I'm just
thinking of one which is actually Psychology Today, which would be great to actually using to go through one of their articles, which are great, I guess. So I haven't been going through a whole one, so it would be interesting. But so we today, and as you cannot see, unfortunately, we are going through Give and Take by Adam Grant actually. And again, so the same thing as yesterday, as I already mentioned, which is hopefully nothing, that bad. I do hope that you can just, deal with it, and I hope that you just find it great as well, because it is a great book, especially if you, post a post or tweet something about Adam Grant, and then he likes it, and then you just, make a Instagram post out of it and tag Adam Grant, and Adam Grant actually likes this post as well. It's just amazing. And I do think just, always looking for the light, if this is actually sufficient, if this is actually good or not good, if it would actually be better like this, but it would be totally nice like this. But I can't. Or can I? Oops. I'm sorry if it's really loud. Is this better? Yeah, I'll let it be like this. It is totally great that he is engaging with his community or with just the people who are reading his books. But so chapter 4, which is quite, a third of the whole thing. So chapter 4, Finding the Diamond in the Rough, and the fact and fiction of recognizing potential. Assessing future potential is difficult. As discussed above, matchers and takers have a disadvantage in creating valuable networks. They seek out only people who can benefit them today, which is fucked up, because most often it is actually people that are valuable for you in the future, or actually these people that go for the future, I should better say. So this is quite another example why actually going for the long term is the better thing to do, better than actually just only going for the short term. For sure, I do also have to say that only going for the short term, like 100%, might not be as ideal as some people actually might say, because if you can't just sustain yourself in the now, I understand, okay, you could just put in money and put in money and put in money and put in money, and eventually at the end you get a lot out of it, as a business or whatever you're thinking just about. This could work. This could totally work, but you just have to somehow get some money as well. You can't just put yourself into such a great debt that at the end you're basically just giving them your whole company because you can't actually pay for the debt anymore. But yeah, so I think going for the long term is completely just great. I think a lot of people should do it more. A lot of people should save more. So in a financial way, but also maybe in a emotional, in a quite life way, quote unquote life way, because wouldn't it be nice that the person that's speaking on your funeral is actually only talking about positive things that you did rather than just the negative things. So basically just talking about you as a negative person or as a good person. And I would totally say that most of the people here would just prefer to be known or be reminded as a good person. So this is also a thing, I think. This ignores undervalued people who blossom into great success, whom givers help without expectation of return. Give and Take discusses why givers tend to be better judges and developers of talent. So why givers? I should just, kind of underline it a little bit more. So the Pygmalion effect, self-fulfilling prophecies of potential. Confounding the potential problem is the Pygmalion effect, a self-fulfilling prophecy where having higher expectations about a person leads to performance increases in that person, which somehow makes sense already, because for me, your mind plays a very, very, very big role, even though a lot of people might just know it, they totally know it, but I guess they just think like, okay, it's only my mind and it's nothing that valuable. The thing is, I'm in a space where just a lot of people are talking about the mind and mindset and that why the mind is so important. So basically the self-development realm, I would even say. But, outside this realm, this whole perception, this whole thinking isn't there, or maybe not as just big or as high or as much. And therefore I'm just pointing it out. And for all the people who just really get pissed off because there are actually so many people who talk about this, and now I am as well, a little fucked up, but I understand this, So this effect has been experimented with within a wide range of professional and educational settings. Usually the experiment is conducted by having all students take a Fox exam, which is a false exam, like, it's not a real one, then randomly assigning a percentage of students into a false high potential group. Instructors are then told which students were identified as high potential. Repeatedly, so now I'm just going to read it and then I just say something to it or about it. Repeatedly, the falsely labeled high potential or bloomers achieved better gains. In grade school students, bloomers gained 10 IQ points more than their peers over 2 years. In the military, high potential trainees do better on expertise tests and weapons evaluations. In the workplace, new employees whose managers are told of their height or high promise receive higher performance ratings. The size of the rating is around D is 0.5 to D is 1.13. Depending on parameters, the effect is stronger when there are initially low expectations, like in problem students and or when subjects are men and in the military. So I do hope that you have got what the whole experiment is all about, and therefore for people who might not have gotten it, I'm going to explain it once more. So they basically had two groups of people. I'm just talking about the student experiment because I guess it's the best one to at least explain. And so there were two groups, and one of them were just, so I guess both of them had the same exact IQ, and they had the same abilities quite. Therefore, having actually more students or quite a lot of students will actually just reduce the kind of possibility that one group is actually very, very high in IQ, just like not on purpose, like because it just happened like this. And and after a test or before a test, and they actually split up the group into, at first it was one group, sorry. And then they just split it up into two groups. And so one of these groups, they told them that they're actually very high just in IQ, and they have very great abilities and whatsoever. And after this test, they just took another test. They just, they just made a better test, or they just had better results on the test because they got told that they are better at what they're doing than anyone else, or that all the other people. And I do think it makes sense because, as I said, at my point of view, the mindset and what you're thinking about you, and therefore maybe also what other people think about you, maybe this is quite a great factor. I do think it is, because there are so many people around us, and especially people who we are looking up to, especially I would say, whether it's your mom, whether it's your boss, whether it's someone in the military that's, very high in rank. If somebody of them was just telling you that you're so intelligent and so the best at, what you're doing, for me it kind of makes sense, okay, that people just getting more confident and better somehow. So maybe I should even just think about these things before I'm taking a test, or before I have a test or an exam. Maybe this could help me. Maybe this could help me just getting better grades with less effort. So the Pygmalion effect occurs because the teacher reacts differently to a person based on her expectations. Does this mean that it basically does not have anything to do with the person? The person isn't just having a better test or is writing a better test because he or she got told that they are so intelligent and whatsoever. So for me, it just seems to be about, okay, as I'm just gonna read on. I just think it's more about the teacher who is actually then correcting the whole test. But let's see. To someone of high promise, a teacher sets high expectations, communicates more warmly, calls to answer more often, gives more advice and feedback, and attributes failure to the task rather than the person. The student responds to positivity, setting into place a positive feedback loop that leads to a sustained self-fulfilling prophecy. In contrast to someone of low promise, a teacher does the inverse. She or he actually attributes failure to the person's low promise, gives fewer chances to succeed, and gives less feedback. Likely out of belief, the advice will be wasted. Similarly, this leads to a vicious cycle where the student feels less motivated, and each progressive failure is more evidence of low promise. So which is just a really, really fucked up vicious cycle. It really is. And so it seems to be, and I'm sorry for actually just telling you before that quite wrongly, it's more about the teacher that is actually correcting the test rather than the student, even though I just believe that it is for sure about the student as well, because if they really get told you are so intelligent and you are so good, I do think this does something with you. I really do. I don't know how, I don't know why it's doing this, but I think only because you're just getting more motivated or more confident in what you're actually doing in this test. Maybe this is actually just the singular reason why you're just performing better. But the thing is, I've always thought if people have a high promise on you or of you actually, then actually if you fail, it is just pretty much fucked up, because they then think okay, it seems okay, you're not as good as you thought you'd be, or you're not as good as the other people thought you would be, and whatsoever. But I'm just trying to figure out a way that I can use it consciously for the people around me, or that just, I can tell it to people, for example, in my class, so that they're actually also using this and just, we can create a framework for somebody in our class that might have, some problems with actually learning and whatsoever, so that this certain person just gets better grades because only we say she or he is good at, the subject, what we're having or whatsoever. If it would be working, I don't know. I haven't tried it out. So takers, givers, and the Pygmalion effect. So it's shown that trainees develop differently in response to the teacher's beliefs. How do makers, matchers, and givers perform differently in this framework? Takers assume that most people are takers and thus place little trust in other people. When they see someone with high performance, they see this person as a threat, which prevents them from wholeheartedly supporting the person. Furthermore, takers tend to dismiss low performers as not possibly being able to help the taker. This creates vicious cycles where takers fail to provide encouraging support. Matchers value reciprocity. So when they see someone of high potential, they do provide support in hopes of returned favors later. But matchers tend to wait to see evidence of performance before making the investment, because it would make sense for them. If they're really just only into getting something back, and they know, okay, I'm gonna give him something or give her something, and chances are pretty high that I'm getting something back from this certain person. And then it really makes sense that you just, choose the people you're being nice to. Quite, even though it sounds so fucking dumb and so fucking even arrogant maybe, but it just makes sense because you do not want to waste your time with people that cannot give you something back that's at least as good or as just nice as you can give them. Thus, they lose opportunities to help people who don't immediately show talent, which makes also sense because if they notice, or if they just think, okay, this certain person doesn't have any talents, or she or he isn't good at what they say they are because there was no evidence in it, or they just didn't show you, or you couldn't see it, then I think you would go on. You would go on to another person and just really miss the opportunity if this certain person is actually good at what they're doing. If not, then for the matcher, it's quite good. Givers don't wait for evidence. By default, givers tend to be optimistic and see everyone as bloomers. All people are diamonds in the rough until proven otherwise. Furthermore, givers don't see high potential people as threatening. Givers provide encouraging support broadly. Critically, they can recognize undervalued people who are ignored by takers and matchers, but with the right environment can blossom. What does actually blossom mean? Oh, I thought so. And it makes sense, and it just really shows again, okay, being a giver just helps the people you're giving to. Just it really helps, and I would even say it really helps the whole cycle of givers. Again, it's basically something that I've been talking about yesterday and the day before already. I do think somehow, even though there might be some ways that you can exclude one of these three types, I do think that you somehow need all of them. Because you need a giver and you need a matcher and you need a taker, or at least I think a bunch of them. Just only those three might not work out. Well, they could. Somehow, the problem is always between the matcher and the taker, because the matcher wants something quite equivalent to what he's given to the taker, but the taker doesn't want to give something back that's quite as good as what he's gotten, and so on. So it would be complicated. But this also shows me, okay, if the giver actually has the ability or just does it, if he or she actually just really creates somehow the fundamental for the people that seem to be undervalued or that are actually undervalued, this could give them the chance actually doing some business with the matcher, because the matcher then actually sees as an evidence that the matcher, nor that the undervalued person is actually of value, and then they just do business and the cycle goes on. And so somehow, I guess, you need all of them. talent is overrated, grit is important. It just really reminds me on Grit, which is a book, which is also self-development book, or self-help. Self-development is also only something that, I don't know, most of the time people talk about self-help. But it seems to be great. It's has a lot of great ratings. I went through it as a summary already, very, very early on this journey, but it was somehow great. So I do not remember lots of it, but I can remember that there were some things that I enjoyed, which is hopefully always the thing. So one reason takers and matchers tend to undervalue potential is that they overemphasize current performance and talent. After all, they want to extract value now. Instead, research shows or has shown that orthogonal character traits like interest and grit make a big difference. Interest drives people to develop skill in the first place, and grit keeps them pushing through setbacks and difficulties. Which makes sense, and it just really, and this is something that I want to underline, they say interest drives people to develop skills in the first place. So it somehow motivates them. And the drive is something that's internal. It is internal. It is something inside you. It's not something that just is from the outside. There might be something on the outside that just creates the urge in you in the inside, and or the drive in you in the inside, that you're actually doing something. But what I just want to underline is that motivation, at my point of view at least, and this is something that I've read quite often, just comes from the inside. And therefore, if you're just telling people, okay, you should do this because it's good for your health, and you should do this and that, and whatsoever, they won't do it because they do not have the urgency in themselves, internally, to actually do these things. If they do not have this sense and do not have this drive, they just won't. Because why would they? They just don't want to. There is no drive. There is no motivation. There is no internal urgency to do that. So why would they? And I do just really have to figure out how to actually change this for people. Like just actually creating this urgency in themselves so that they actually take action without your support, without your motivation. Maybe recognizing a lot of things as well there just could help. Both character traits can be nurtured by early teachers who are caring and patient. Teachers who can spark the interest and provide positive experience set the main foundation for developing skill. Something that I actually forgot to point out, which was something that's very, very important for me, is that they above pointed out that actually being a nice teacher, being a teacher that is good, well, it's just really subjective what's a good teacher like. But I would say, for most of the people, it's like, this person is kind, this person can teach you well, this person is somehow just, also empathetic on a certain level, because it just helps them to actually kind of learn you and or teach you these things. So yeah, what I just wanna pick out is that being a good teacher is first of all something that's not quite common, and second of all something that's very, very important, and that could also do a lot of things, as they already just by now pointed out. A teacher, in a child's very early days could make their life. You could really just give them a certain motivation, a certain desire, the certain character traits, because you are just, having a lot of time with them. If you're just in primary school, you still have, I guess, like 5 hours a day, which then means 25 hours a week, which is a lot. It really is a lot by just spending time with someone for such a long period, over a year or even more. 4 years, 5 years. I don't know, how it's, what it's like in your country. But in my place, it's usually 4 years of primary school and then going to somehow a junior high school. Is it something like this? Or junior middle? No, it is a middle school for sure. And whatsoever. Or it is a junior high school. Yeah, it is a junior high school and or a middle school, I guess. I always forget these things. But yeah, so for me, it's just incredible how much of a just influence do all the teachers and also your parents have on you. They can really somehow decide, quote unquote decide. It's not really that they decide, but they can really put something in you that's incredible. It is really incredible that they can put something into you, some of a desire, something like a motivation, something that's really just motivating you and also giving you the right perspective, maybe just the right perspective of, okay, you have a great life because you can go to school, you have a great life because you're living in a first world country, you're having a great life because you have food and you have not to just really be feared about dying the next fucking day. They could really spark something in all the people, also your parents, you know, and this just shows me it is just a job that has a great responsibility somehow. It really has, for me at least. But yeah, so givers tend to be these supportive teachers because givers signal that they care about the students' growth. Students respond better to teaching feedback and don't request the teacher's motives. Furthermore, givers tend to be more greedy themselves as they are spurred on by the good of the group to put in more than they would be willing to do for themselves. For more on grit, read my detailed summary of grit. Actually there is a summary of grit on the alanchang.com website, which is basically the exact same website that I'm on right now. So grit, the power of passion and perseverance. If takers know this, will they simply select on grit rather than current performance? Possibly, but they may be at a disadvantage by not creating the environment that nurtures talent growth. Is it a way... I'm quite slow today, but I still think that it's quite a great episode. Avoid sunk cost fallacy. Givers invest a lot of time in developing people, but givers don't have a magical Midas touch. Not all trainees have the talent or the grit to reach that potential. So with limited time, how can givers focus on people with the true promise, and how do they avoid the escalation of commitment to investment in a person? Escalation of commitment is a powerful force that pushes people to, throw good money after bad. And there are 4 factors here. The first one is the ego threat. The biggest factor, if I don't keep investing, I'll look and feel like a fool. The second one is sunk cost fallacy. You weigh your past losses in your decision making rather than the reinitiating a decision. For example, if you bought 2 tickets for $200 but realize you don't want to go to the show for 4 hours, the rational decision is to consider whether you want to waste 4 hours for $0. Wait. So if you have bought two tickets for $200 but realize you don't want to go to the show for 4 hours, the rational decision is to consider whether you want to waste 4 hours for $0. I think it is a writing mistake or a spelling mistake or something. I guess he just wants to say, do you really want to waste 4 hours for $200? No, I understand what he says, because you won't be at the show. You don't want to do a show for 4 hours. Yeah, no, you're basically just then wasting just 4 hours and $200. Or at least I'm seeing it this way. Anticipated regret. Will I be sorry that I didn't give this another chance? And project completion, a desire to follow through and finish. In many cases, escalation of commitment to a bad decision is worse for the group, but better in the short term for the individual in terms of distinguishing mistakes and massaging ego. Takers are more vulnerable to ego threat than givers are. They are concerned about protecting their reputation, not about the health of the organization. Cutting off a bad investment makes them look foolish and can incur big personal costs like a loss of a promotion. Thus, continuing the bad investment allows the taker to continue hiding the prospect of failure. In contrast, givers are more concerned about achieving the goal of the group than about ego. Thus, givers are more willing to admit personal mistakes and de-escalate commitment. Studies show that people make more accurate decisions when they are deciding on behalf of others rather than themselves. Givers do this naturally. It makes sense. Because often, and this just plays into something they actually pointed out, and I'm hopefully not just spoiling something. At the very beginning of this whole article, there was just a mini summary of this summary, for all the rules, which is great because you can see what's in there. Is there something in that just is valuable for me, and something like this. But it just said something that we should actually just pretend that we are caring about ourselves. Maybe also in a way, which is, I don't remember if this was my assumption or what I was thinking about or what they actually said, but I was thinking about, okay, you could act like you're taking care of yourself because you take care of somebody else. Like, it is important that you care about yourself, because if you do not care about yourself, you won't be able to care about somebody else, or you won't be able to help somebody else, which will totally be in the mind of a giver. Maybe a giver that's not quite into themselves because they want to give to some other people. And they're too much of a giver. Something. But I think there was something else actually. Prospect of... yeah, never mind. So in contrast, givers are more concerned about achieving the goal of the group than about the ego. Oh, I was there actually. So studies show that people make a more accurate decision when they're deciding on behalf of others rather than themselves. I do think that people are way more just, conscious about their decisions, or way more frugal. Can you say this? Frugal about a decision. When this decision is just involving another person, or eventually also a big group. I do think they are way more safe, or they're just going for the safe thing, and they're way more like, I'm gonna think about it clearly and just calmly, and I will just think about it. And I do think if it's just about yourself, it could be like, okay, it's just about me, and it's just me, and whatsoever. I'll go on. I've read that one. I've read that one as well. So furthermore, takers tend to discount constructive feedback that harms their ego. In an experiment, subjects were identified as givers or takers and then made decisions on how to solve problems. All participants received a random score indicating that they were below or above average, then given a suggestion to delegate more. When takers believed they were above average, they delegated 30% more often, but when they believed they were below average, they delegated only 15% as often. In contrast, givers delegated 30% more often regardless of the feedback. But what is delegated? Yeah, thank you. It's the same exact thing in German, but I still don't know what it means. Not exactly. So by avoiding constructive feedback, takers continuously entrench into their former decisions, as doing otherwise would deflate their ego in being correct. Sorry, I'm actually not showing you the text. Takers want to be the smartest people in the room. In contrast, givers care about the performance of the group and focus more on the organizational consequences of their decisions. Thus they take in as much data and disconfirming evidence as they can to make better decisions, even at the short-term expense of their ego and reputation. Yeah, and with this being said, I think this is just the end of the episode. I do think and hope it was something like, I do not know. I do hope that there was something in it for you. I went through a bit, actually. Yeah, it was a bit. It is a bit. We went further quite a bit, I would say. It is not. Yeah, we really did. I do think the informations were good. Some of them maybe were valuable. Maybe you have just gotten way more out of it because I'm just reading it and trying to read, quite fast so that I'm not wasting time with reading. And often I'm actually not just knowing what I'm reading, to be really honest. Always nice to just really kinda inhale your own, what is it called? You know, the thing that's in your mouth, this fluid. Or fluid. Yeah, never mind. With that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I wish you the best health, wealth, happiness, and success. But still, please remember how you're gonna be remembered, and maybe therefore you just have to give something back to the people, whether it's, I don't know, whether it's a smile, whether it's a compliment, and whether it's actually something like charity. You could do it. And I'll see you tomorrow. I love you. Thank you for viewing. And also just go to the link down below. The links down below. They're all the links to my social media platforms. And really thank you from the bottom of my fucking heart for showing and or listening to this episode and or watching it. I see you.